Entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Chair will entertain a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session. Do
So moved.
I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is a work session between the school committee and the town council for fiscal year 20 school department budget overview. Sorry, we're a little bit late, I apologize, we ran into a little extra time needed in our past executive session, so please carry on and okay, you're free to do it. Okay, if you want to get started, the floor's yours.
Sure. We appreciate, again, the opportunity to come before you. Before I get started, I just want to thank Mr. Wazeker and Mr. Arnett. I know an often used term in these halls is about transparency, and one of the initiatives that they started this year was to pull all the department heads, the financial, those in charge of the finances, together on a monthly basis. We had our first meeting last Monday, and it's a great opportunity. I think there was a great agenda that talks about everybody highlighting what their needs are for the upcoming year, any potential barriers, and we'll be doing this on a monthly basis. So I know Sarah and I attended that meeting, as well as several representatives from all the departments. And I think if we truly want to work together, because we talk about that, but I think this is a great opportunity. So I appreciate Mr. Wazeker and Mr. Arnett. I'm not going to be long-winded tonight. I'm going to turn it over to the person I know everybody wants to hear from, Ms. Mangiarelli. But you'll see our budget. Again, it's very preliminary, and we know we handed you a hard copy, but there's a disclaimer in there, and I just want to state that there's so many variables that we're not aware of, and we want to make sure that, we may come back, and I know we'll meet many times. We'll meet with the committee, but we want to make sure that that as soon as information becomes available, we'll repopulate. So this is our best thinking today. And the other thing I just want to say is that this budget is, we rewrote our strategic plan 2 years ago. We're in the middle of the second year, and we have 5 different areas of the strategic plan, which are focused on our curriculum work. That's both our academic and our working around behavioral, social, emotional. We have an emphasis on early learning, where several years ago the committee approved all-day K, and we've recently had presentations where we see the impact that's having as we progress. Emphasis on professional development. If we want to hold people to high standards, and you saw all the information that's come out about, the RIDECAS and being compared to, not just within Rhode Island, but to Massachusetts, then we need to provide our educators with the support that they need. We can't just say, here, go and do it. And we had a presentation a few weeks ago around the efforts that are going on a professional development. The other part is the community partnerships. I think, we've worked with all of our colleagues in terms of the municipal side, DHS, the police, recreation, library, Department of Public Works. We actually have a young man that's interning in the Department of Public Works. Who am I leaving out? Library, and I know I'm going to leave somebody out, but we've also been working with other community partners. We played a part in that whole initiative that many other municipalities did with Coventry Lumber, that I know Kendra wrote a great article on in terms of the Thanksgiving. And so we try to continue that work. We feel that as the largest consumer in terms of municipal resources, we also put out a great product, which is our students. And then finally, another tenet of our strategic plan is facilities and our finance. And I feel that you've seen the work that Ms. Mangiarelli has done with our departments around transparency and really trying to help us move forward in a good position. And we all know the condition of our facilities. We know the condition of the town facilities. I do want to say, and we'll be presenting this to the school committee Thursday night, though, we had written a letter of support asking to RIDE, the Department of Education, for support for technical assistance. And they've awarded us up to $150,000, which we wouldn't have had the money to move forward. And that'll be a community effort to look at our current facilities and also to look at where do we see ourselves going in terms of this, our needs for our educational system 30, 40 years out. And that'll be supported by that money. So that, and again, that isn't just an internal issue effort, that's going to be a community-wide. So there'll be a facilitator that'll be hired to bring in community participants, and so we'll give more in the future. But the first thing is I have to present that to the school committee Thursday night, and they have to support us going forward with this memorandum of agreement. So there's a lot of positive things. I know we want to instill that pride back as working with our colleagues in Coventry. There's so much to be thankful for and to focus on the positive. But it's so easy how the negative can just get a life of its own. And we're hoping to work with our colleagues to change that. So having said that, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Mandrelli. And again, at the end, if you have questions, we'll do our best to answer them, but we'll be coming back before you.
It's okay. All right, thank you for having us here tonight. So I will go through the presentation. If you want to stop me as I go through, that's fine, or if you want to save the questions to the end, whatever's convenient for you. What we can't emphasize enough is that this is extremely preliminary information. We are very early in the budget process. We're working off of almost every single assumption being in its first draft stages. So just please keep that in mind as we go forward. I cannot promise that what we're presenting you tonight is going to look anything close to what will come back once we have more time to go through all the details. So just to give you an idea of some of the assumptions in the budget timeline that we'll be looking at, state education aid, that is not finalized until after the March 1st enrollment. So that will come out mid-March to April. But if you remember 2 years ago, even after that, the state came out with a late revision around the 22nd of April that kind of threw us for a loop. And then it still has to get passed and enacted in June. Tuition estimates, usually we don't have those estimates for incoming enrollment until around March. Budget books from principals and department heads. Just as a reminder, the way that we've started to do the budget is the principals, and they'll be working with their department heads and curriculum coordinators this year. They'll actually be building all the supplies and the school-based budgets really kind of from the bottom up. So they have a line item detail. They'll have to provide the dollar amount for those lines and the explanation. So that will be back from the principals between the 4th and the 11th of January. Transportation costs, we are going out to bid for our busing contract this year. We're hoping to have that back by mid-January to be able to work that in. But one thing to keep in mind that the last extension of that lease did kind of grandfather in the fleet. So we do need to look at a new transportation contract that has an updated fleet. A lot of our buses are over 10 years old and 100,000 miles, so that is something that we'll need to look at. So we're in the process of finalizing that bid now.
Sarah,
Yes.
do we expect that our current provider will be bidding on a new contract?
I would expect that they would bid, but whether they're awarded that contract or not will be determined on the other contracts that
Are
come
they
in.
in a position to update their fleet?
You mean outside of a bid?
Yes.
I would caution against that. What happened in a previous administration was the action that was taken. Unfortunately, what happened was they still negotiated an annual increase of almost 3% in each year, but they waived the requirements of having a max mileage and a max age on the bus. So when they did that extension, it was nice for budget stability, but I think it really pushed the fleet to the maximum of their life. So we're hoping that forcing a competitive bid process, especially with some of the changes at the statewide, looking to utilize minivans for some out-of-district transportation, that hopefully we can have a more competitive pricing.
Thank you.
Health and dental estimates, we are self-insured, so we operate differently from the town. So those do not usually come in until March or April. And then the out-of-district and special education costs, those really can fluctuate throughout the year. Depends on who's coming into the district and what applications are on file. There's really no timeline for that, but usually we have a better handle the farther we go on. So just going over some of our preliminary assumptions from a revenue perspective. The preliminary state aid numbers did come in favorable this year compared to what we were expecting and what we had experienced. So we are looking at a projected 1.8 million. That is based off of the March 2018 student enrollment. And looking at it quickly, it did look like it was impacted slightly by the percentage of free and reduced price lunch and the state share, which has to do with the equalized weighted assessment value of properties. But I don't have all of that data to really dig down and say this is exactly what changed year over year. I can tell you that we've done a lot as far as tracking our students and really analyzing families to make sure that if we had one student in a household that was marked free, all of the siblings and anybody else living in that household was also marked the same way. So that has definitely been a focus of ours and clearly has had a favorable impact on this. The rest of our revenues, as of right now, I'm leaving consistent with FY19 because we don't have any better data to really update those. On the next slide, just to dig a little bit deeper into the state education aid, I do want to caution the council and the school committee that despite the fact that we received an increase, a projected increase in our state aid for next year, you can see that with the new funding formula, there is no maintenance of effort requirement on the state level. Again, I think that's something that we need to bring up when we have our legislature meeting, that needs to be continued to be brought forward to the state level. But you can see some of these communities that have fluctuated significantly year over year. That's very difficult for communities who enter into multi-year contracts to not have that stability of the state education aid. So while we're receiving an increase or projected increase in our state aid, we as a community need to remember that that doesn't, one, negate our responsibility as a local community to continue funding, and to be aware that next year we could almost have that 1.8 million taken away. On the expenditure side, fortunately, all of our contracts are settled, so that is a little bit easier once we start looking at budgets. So this does include all contractual and step raises in these projections. What we don't have is our final staffing pattern. That will really be in the spring as well. We'll do the same as we did last year, where we look at the number of students enrolled in the different classes, what our FTE requirement is versus what we're currently have on staff. We do have a list of several areas that are deficient in staff. We've had to hire a lot of special educators, one-year only positions in this fiscal year, given some of the student needs that we've needed to address. And right now, the projections include exactly the staffing that we have on hand now. So we have several employees that are out on leave. If those come back, that will impact our salary numbers as well. Health, dental, and life, I have between 3% and 6% depending on the actual benefit, and you'll see that a little further on. One of the issues that we'll run into that will be somewhat of a wild card is our pharmaceutical costs. Our self-insurance collaborative decided to change the way that we receive pharmacy rebates. That is projected up to a 16% savings on the collaborative, so we're just a little component of it, and it will really depend on what our drug spend is. We won't know that, though, until at least January, because this is the first year that this is taking place. The Trust did something similar, so I think they're in a little bit of the same boat, although they operate a little bit more on a fixed rate, whereas we're truly a self-insured. So I'm hoping that we do see some relief in the health side, but I can't guarantee that at this point. Purchase services is an average increase of 5% due to out-of-district tuition. I've shared this with the school committee, and I'll share it with you as well, that right now our out-of-district tuition for non-special ed students is higher than our out-of-district for special ed. That's a very tough item to control because in many ways, the commissioners allowed students to be a little bit more migratory and going to their districts, and we really have no ability to stop that. So our only opportunity to keep kids in is really to build an educational program that they don't want to leave. So it is about reinvesting the money back into it, which is kind of the model that we do with special ed. We try and build up those special ed departments that we can service the kids in-house, and we need to start thinking about that on the career and tech side so that we don't lose as many kids. And also I have an increase in there for the transportation contract, which is, as I mentioned, a wild card. Furniture and equipment, I do have that increase as well for about 3%. We have a significantly old vehicle fleet. I believe Mr. Arnett is going to be taking a tour at some point in time of our vehicles to see. So I have reached out to Kevin Klein, who does a lot of the lease lease purchasing for the town. They did our one-to-one initiative, so I'll look at some of the percentage rates. If I can determine that we're spending more on maintaining our vehicles that are from the 80s with 200,000 plus miles to get in a new fleet that we can slowly phase in, that will probably be a recommendation that we bring forward. We also have a presentation that the Director of Facilities will be doing to highlight what our vehicle fleet looks like and the mileage and the amount that we're spending on maintaining them. So some of the ways that we're working to improve the budget, revenue, our best effort in understanding the revenue is really digging into,
I'm looking at that screen and that one.
oh, that one's not changing.
There's a little bit of a delay.
Oh, okay.
A little?
Not a lot of it. It's a cold night. The data's not going over as quickly.
Okay.
So as far as working to improve the budget from a revenue perspective, really our best defense is trying to get a handle on all of those variables that change that state aid, and continuing to be vocal at the state level to continue to look at that funding formula that was supposed to be equitable, but it also should be somewhat consistent. Again, our student data is being monitored. We will do another push to make sure that before that deadline, we have all the free and reduced price lunch students properly marked, so that can positively impact our state aid. Special Education Department, Finance Department, we just completed the high cost education calculation. Again, it seems like that's needed a little bit of work over time, so I'd say this is the second year that we're getting a little bit more data captured that will help our high cost special ed students. We're reviewing our career and tech courses. That will be ongoing. Mr. Levis and I just discussed today about some other course offerings that could come through, but we will do an analysis to see if we think that those new courses will be able to get bodies in the seat, because we're certainly not in a position to add new courses that are costing us more than the tuition that it's bringing in. And we'll continue to explore options to increase tuition revenue through expanded marketing of our CTE program. Again, as far as the expenditures, at this point, from a staffing perspective, it's really going to be reviewing our staffing patterns to make sure we're maximizing our human capital. We're doing that in central office to review. We've done time studies to see who does what, to make sure that we're really getting the most out of everybody and that people are properly suited in positions where they can flourish at as well. I already touched on the WB Community Health as far as the changes in the pharmaceuticals. Principals are working on their budgets. We are reviewing all software, curriculum, and equipment costs. In some ways, having a tight budget will help you to think outside the box. I know all the principals have, we've all discussed that we have a small pocket of money and we need to start maximizing it. So doing business as it's always been done may not be the way to do it. So if there's a software that you don't really love, that we can all get an agreement, we can move and shift in a different direction. Now's kind of that time that we're going to start looking at doing some of those changes and directions. We're also looking at contracts that we have. I met with a copy contract today. I will share this with the school committee, but we're actually spending more on our copy contract than we have budgeted for maintenance on our facilities. So clearly that is a significant issue that we need to look at. Probably means that we're not using the best machines in our building, or we need to look at our consumption on an ongoing basis. We're also looking at supplies by location to determine if there's inequity even amongst our own schools, so that we can level that playing field out for all students. So now getting to the actual budget, jumping right to the local appropriation, because a lot of these other numbers we've kind of touched on. From an operational perspective, as it stands right now, again with no changes in staffing patterns and preliminary estimates, I only have the operation side going up $124,000. My goal was to have that increase in state aid cover a majority of our operating costs, because it was a large sum of money coming in. But again, I'll caution you that if that state education aid drops, we still have all of these contractual obligations, so that needs to be something that we're aware of. Also, once you set that base lower from a local appropriations, the amount that we can increase year over year is limited, because you can only go up so much on that base revenue. Jumping to the next slide, the annual maintenance requirement. So at the very end of FY18, it was passed that there would be annual requirements for maintenance expenditures in all school department budgets. So this was phased in over 5 years. FY19, we're supposed to have 1% of our operating budget going towards maintenance. In FY 2020, next year's budget, we'll have 1.5, and that will phase in all the way up to 3%. This is going to be tough for Coventry because it's almost like we're going from 0 to 90 in 60 seconds because we haven't put a lot of money into the maintenance and improvements of our facilities. So to try and get that bar up to that 1.5% of our operating budget is going to be kind of a tough haul. Unfortunately, if we do not hit that requirement, we basically take ourselves out of the running for any educational, housing aid reimbursement. So Coventry's base reimbursement is 44% on eligible projects. If we cannot prove that we're meeting these thresholds, we will not be eligible for that 44%. With the bond that just passed, there's a possibility to go up to almost 66%. Almost 66%, depending on the different energy enhancements and all the different bonuses that are available to you. But again, if we can't meet this base as a community, we won't even be eligible for any of that. So what that looks like for FY20, 1.5% is just over $1 million. Fortunately, we have on staff tradespeople in our maintenance department. Those salaries and benefits are allowed to be included as part of this. If it was strictly janitorial staff that were not licensed, those would not be included in this calculation. So in the bottom half, you can see tradesperson salary and benefits of about $475,000. And the general maintenance, so that's what we actually have budgeted to really take care of our buildings, is about $77,000. Those amounts are already included in the operating numbers that you've seen. So the top half are some additional items that we've put down here, extremely preliminary. Clearly not all of our needs, but an example of how we can get to that 1 million threshold to even put ourselves in the running for the housing aid. So what we did, we had a NEASC review, so we listed some of the items that NEASC identified. To go forward and say that we have not done anything on those NEASC items could put us in a issue that we're talking about accreditation. So we put those as a priority to ensure that that accreditation remains. But to think that this is the only list of items that are needed or that will come forward from a capital perspective is pretty low. So even the HVAC, we don't have an estimate on that. The Director of Facilities is working on that, but we anticipate that to be more than $300,000. We have new boilers, but all of the controls, and I know there's some ductwork that needs to go along as well. That could be very well double that $300,000. So items that came up in the NEASC report was the HVAC system at the high school, the gym floor replacement. Also items identified was the library and auditorium. What we have to be careful on is equipment. So even auditorium seating is not eligible. That will not count. That's considered movable equipment. Same with bleachers. That's considered movable equipment. So that would not be considered as well. It's really leasehold improvements to improve your facilities and to improve your facilities or to expand. So Mr. Levis had mentioned the technical assistance. That $150,000 would be used towards the Stage 1, Stage 2 application and the Educational Master Facilities Plan, which are all part of the requirements that RIDE has in order to receive that reimbursement. But again, this first step is proving that this community is going to invest in the facilities before the state will come in and honor that as well. So from a summary, as it stands right now, the local appropriation increase on an operational side is an additional $124,000. The total increase in the capital requests, again, above and beyond what is already included in the operational budget, is $535,000 for a total increase in appropriation of $660,000 as a preliminary estimate. As you know, we did submit a list to RIDE as well with health and safety issues from a capital perspective. So we may need to look at those if we cannot get those completed in this fiscal year. Obviously, to not do anything on items that have been identified as a health and safety issue would be a concern both to the community and to the students in the schools. Just to go a little further on the capital reinvestment, I wanted to put in an analysis in here that the hardest part is really getting this cycle going. But as you can see, if we can get that additional even $535,000, the housing aid reimbursement that would come back would be 44%. That would come back in the following fiscal year. What we would do is we would reinvest that towards our 2021 requirement of 2%. So if you looked at 2021 on our operating budget, assuming the operating budget stayed the same, just for an example, our requirement would be 1.45. We already would have increased our appropriation by the $535,000 in this year. We'd receive back $235,000 in revenue. So the additional request from a local perspective for capital would be $679,000. So you do get that minimum 44% back to kind of help you reinvest. So that's really where we stand.
Well, thank you for that. I got a little question for myself on, you said you expressed some concern about the 1.8 million from state aid. You had said it's gonna go to maintenance and effort, but you were concerned that if we didn't appropriate for next year, we could lose it, it could change drastically, or can you explain that again for me?
Right, so the 1.8 in state aid, one, it's preliminary, so what happens in March could be significantly different, or what finally gets adopted at the state level could be significantly different from that 1.8. So one, I just wanted to put that cautionary statement out there that we really won't have a final idea of what that's going to look like. Last year, we saw it change almost $400,000 between this time and March last year. So that's one aspect of it, is that there's a variability even in what we'll get this year. The second part is year over year, we've seen communities go up and down. So while assuming that 1.8 is the final number this fiscal year, as you've seen in that report, it doesn't guarantee that we'll even keep that 1.8 next year. We could go backwards again in state aid next year and receive a reduction, which is what happened to us this fiscal year.
We have in the past.
Smithfield received 1.5 million increase last year. This year they received a 1.5 million decrease, and they've met with RIDE trying to figure out why. We believe that part of the reason that Sarah and many people, individuals in our office, in our schools, have been working on making sure that our numbers are accurate. You know, we saw that a couple of years ago. Remember when we lost 150 students in free and reduced lunch, which translated into almost $500,000, and we were all shocked. And that helped us, you know, from that moment on, we've been really digging deep and working to make sure we capture that. But our concern is that, you know, this is great. I mean, this is great news for all of us. We know that this year. However, we can't get ourselves into, you know, we did that slide, I think last year's budget, where we showed what the increase had been from the state and what, you know, in terms of what the increase or what the amount was given from the town. And the state had cautioned us on that. And that's where we ran into that huge cliff last year. We were hoping just to even be level funded this year, to be honest with you. So when we saw this number, I mean, I've never seen Sarah, I don't see you smile that much, but that day she had a smile ear to ear coming, and, you know, which was good news. And, right? I mean, so we just have to be cautious and not crying wolf, not saying the sky's falling, but we need to make good decisions moving forward. And,
Well,
Right, and my last point to that was, I think what we saw a lot in this community previously was when the school was on the quote-unquote winning side, the support from the local community really cut off to almost zero for several years. And my other statement of it from a cautionary perspective is, just because we are receiving additional state education aid doesn't alleviate the community's responsibility to still fund the educational system. And as you saw, fortunately that 1.8 did pretty much cover my expectations from an operational standpoint, but there is still this big elephant in the room as far as capital that has not been addressed. And now the state's basically come in and said, you can't turn a blind eye to it anymore. So that was my other statement from a cautionary perspective, really for the community at whole, that we need to still
The
invest in
timing was right
that.
for us to receive that extra money and then also being forced to come up with the capital improvement. So it is gonna certainly help us get off to a roll. So, are there
Yes.
any other questions from the rest of the council? Yeah, Mr. Cook, okay.
I'd just like to commend the Coventry Public Schools Administration and the school committee for increasing data collection and analysis, which presents a very clear picture to us as to what your requirements are. And I also appreciate the cautionary note that although we're going to be hopefully getting an increase this year, we can't depend upon that in future years. And we also know that third year of the teacher's contract will put other burdens on us, so we need to be planning ahead not only for this coming year, but the following year. But also, there's been a great improvement in data collection, and Mr. Levis has always mentioned that he believes in transparency and openness in budgeting, and I believe that every time you present, you give us that clear picture. Also, I note that what attracts people's attention is the loss of accreditation. So we have to be absolutely sure that we plan to take care of all the needs that we need to in order to keep our accreditation at the high school. If you lose that, you lose a community. So we need to do everything we can to make sure we get what we need in order to not only keep up the high school accreditation, but to keep up the value of all our schools for all of our students. Thank you.
All right, well said. Mr. Cody, you have something to say?
I've just got a couple of comments to make. I am fully confident that with Dr. Dixon sitting up here with us now instead of on the school committee, that she will help us all to understand the budget, how you present it, how it can change. I feel very confident in the fact that when it comes to the school department's budget, I'll be tapping into Dr. Dixon's knowledge on a regular basis to help me understand all of that moving forward. The other statement I'd like to make is that I live next door to the maintenance facility that you have over in Oak Haven. And I see the vehicles that you generously refer to as maintenance vehicles, Mr. Levis. I can tell you when it comes to some of your maintenance vehicles, to coin a phrase, the sky is falling. I've seen them coming in and out of there. I wouldn't take to the end of the street to get a cup of coffee. And your ladies and gentlemen, your crews are driving them every day and getting the job done. So, you know, just from a personal standpoint, I see them coming and going. I would say from a safety standpoint for your crew, and for everybody else that's on the road with those vehicles, that needs to be addressed more sooner than later, I would say. So with that, thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate you guys coming in.
Thank you.
Are there any more comments from the council?
I have.
Okay, Mr. Lassiter?
Just one question, Sarah. Well, on the preliminary capital requests area, I'm looking on there, I'm seeing tradesperson salary and benefits, general maintenance. Now, is there an assumption that some of those people are going to be providing the work for the other capital requests, or that's strictly the maintenance issues? In other words, we're doing partial replacement on the HVAC and the gym replacement floor. Will our shop tradespeople be doing that? That's not included in that
No.
that work.
No. So really, I pulled out those salaries and benefits because they can be used towards that count of getting towards that 1.5%. We do utilize our tradespeople to do most of the repairs. So we send as little as possible out to other companies to have them come in and do the work. So because we have those licensed, skilled employees on staff who are maintaining our buildings at a different level than just cleaning the buildings, RIDE has determined that counts because we're basically using them to maintain instead of having outside companies come in. Whether or not they would be doing some of this bigger work, no, not at all.
all right.
This is
That's-
truly just an example
To
of
include-
how we can get to that
You're
$1
gonna
million.
Pull it up all to that money. So in other words,
Exactly.
it's not going to be all funding that's needed from new appropriations or new monies.
No,
But,
absolutely not.
Other than that 500,000 in capital needs that we've
Right,
got there. Okay.
right.
My other question is again the pathways to success change. There were assumptions in there that revenue will be increasing based on that. Is it too early to
Yeah.
assume what any of those increases may be
Yeah,
at this time?
I mean, the answer is yes. A couple things. One is, we've talked about this many times, that obviously there's no guarantees, but we're doing so I'm going to start off to the other program first, just so you know that we to be completely blunt, the political climate is changed. And you remember the other program we're looking at doing, if you just, you have to be really under a rock to not see the context of the United States and China right now. And so that's kind of a status quo situation right now. But with our pathways, so there's things we can control, things we can't control. But with our pathways, Mrs. Lori Ferguson has worked with the individuals in the career tech, with the high school administration, central office administration. There's been a lot of renewed effort around marketing. Just this past couple of weeks, advertisement that was supported with a communication consultant went out to probably 7 or 8 local newspapers. We're doing shadowing, so I believe is it next week, Mr. Lucian, or this week? This week. So this week, we're actually bringing students up, busing students from the middle school to do shadowing in different career tech programs. Because one of the issues we talked about is, even if we don't generate revenue, we want to keep our own students, and that's one of the comments that Ms. Mandrellian made, is that if you look at some of the other facilities, we've had Perkins money, which has helped support some of the facilities that we have. But a lot of our facilities, we haven't been able to invest. And when Sarah mentioned putting in money like the boilers, we have boilers, but the rest of the HVAC system is shot. It's like giving me a new heart, but my veins and arteries just aren't functioning. And so the same thing with our career tech. While we have portions of the building, we've had equipment that's been funded, a lot of it isn't. And we're hoping to change that. There was a very successful career fair that was put on by Junior Achievement last week. I think it was last Wednesday and Thursday at the Rhode Island Convention Center. We had all of our programs there. If you follow Twitter, they were tweeting constantly. In the Providence Journal last Friday, there was a picture of one of our students that works in cosmetology. So there were 4,000 8th grade students from around the state that went to that. So we've upped the ante, the efforts that we are trying to improve the pathways. Mentioned that we're trying to put forward a cybersecurity component to our career tech. We're doing a lot of revamping and changing program, the design, the naming, to be more enticing. So there's a lot of effort, but we won't know until probably March. So, and I just want like we said, these are things that we're excited about, but again, what we can control and can't control. But there is a renewed effort to do that, to get more people involved, and really to make sure that, we have 800 students this year. 800 of our students, of our 1,400 some odd students, are taking career tech courses. So we're seeing a renewed interest in that. We all know that. I met with Mr. McGee last year, and we're talking about the average age of employees, like skilled employees that work for like the Department of Public Works, is like in their 50s. We need to start getting that renewed. Mr. Mike Sabatoni from the International Builders or Laborers Union was saying that like 58 is the average age. So we know that we need to start to look at that differently and try to get more people involved. So, but that's where we stand with those.
Great, thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I want to thank the school department for coming out, and I look forward to working, and we're going to work closely and make this budget. It looks promising, and we're going to make the budget work, and we look forward to working many more budget hearings. So thank you very much for coming out. We're going to take just a few minute break before we start the council meeting, as we've been in meeting since 5:30, so we're going to use the
The school
facility.
committee need to,
Do you need to close your meeting?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you may.
So, is there a motion to adjourn?
I make motion to adjourn.
I have 6:07. Yes.
Okay. 18. Sorry for a little bit late, but we had a lot to cover. We've been meeting since 5:30. First item was roll call. Madam Clerk?
Kerry McGee,
Here.
Greg LaBoissoniere,
Yep.
Deborah Bacon, Gary Cody, Ian Dixon, Nicholas Gorham,
Here.
Ed Wazika.
Colonel Sergeant, if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you just stand, remain standing for invocation. Lord, we ask for your guidance to help the council make decisions that are best for the town. We ask for the members of the military that are protecting us so that we may enjoy the holiday season. We also ask prayers for the Bush family. We have lost President George Bush, our 41st president. So for these things we pray. All right, thank you. Amen. Okay, the next item is President's comments. I'm sorry, I did miss the emergency evacuation plans. Okay, the next item is the President's comments. First, my first full council meeting as president. I want to thank again my fellow council members who supported me, and I look forward to the challenge. I want to congratulate the Coventry Rams for winning the state championship, also winning the New England's, and only missing the national championship by 1 point. It made us proud to be Coventry. We've had some good sports teams coming out of the little town of Coventry, so I'd like to congratulate them. I would also like to thank our military soldiers, especially those that are not able to be with their families during this holiday season. All right. Also, I would like to thank our Parks and Recreation Department for putting on a wonderful Christmas tree lighting ceremony last Friday night. It was attended by between 200 or 300 residents. It was a good time and had by all. All right. Next item would be legislators meeting, which will be on with the council on January 7th at 7 o'clock. I'd like to remind all council members to forward questions and concerns for that night to our town manager. All right. The next thing I have is we have some vacancies in some of our boards and commissions. We're looking for sewer subcommittee members. We're looking for a member of a tax assessment board of review, and that needs to be one from District 1 and one from District 4. So council members from them districts, if you know of anybody that would be a good candidate for the tax assessment board of review, please let it be known, and we'll get an application in. And we also are looking for one.
Excuse me, Mr. President, that's just District 1 that the vacancy occurs.
Okay.
Just District 1.
District 1, all right. So
Correct.
corrected. All right, the next one, we're looking for a member for the Patuxent River Authority. There's one vacancy. So anybody you know that might be interested in serving on any of our boards or commissions, please put it out there and have the people volunteer and help us out on these boards. All right, the people, there's not a lot of them knocking down our door to volunteer for these boards. We really need them. All right, the next thing is I would like to ask that all cell phones be put on silent as to not to disrupt our meeting. If you must use your cell phone quietly, get up and go use it in the foyer, please, so we don't disrupt our meeting. And last but not least, I would like to wish everybody, because we will not have another meeting until after the new year, I would like to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. All right, thank you. That's for President's comments. Okay, the next item would be approval of a town council minutes for November 13th and November 26th. The chair will entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Or any discussion, any changes?
Yeah, is there any discussion, any changes on them?
Sometimes we do.
I know that you two were not
I
here for
have
the-
to abstain for the one On the 13th
All right,
is,
so should we take them separately
Why
then?
don't we do that?
Okay,
Why don't we take them separately
separately?
so we can, all right, let's do
Okay.
that for the 13th, November 13th minute.
Then all right.
I will
I'll-
entertain a motion for the, accept the minutes for the
I'll
13th.
make that motion for the 13th.
Do we have a second? Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye,
All opposed?
okay.
Okay, now the next one.
Motion to approve the minutes for the 26th.
Right, motion to approve the minutes of the 26th. And Chair will entertain a motion to accept
Yeah.
the minutes.
There you go. That was my motion.
Okay? Do I have a
Second.
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 Any discussion? Any changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay. The next will be council district updates. We'll start by our far right, with Councilwoman Bacon.
I really don't have anything tonight, but I just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday and a Happy New Year, and see you in 2019.
Okay, Mr. Cody?
Couple of things I would ask. December seems to be a very bad month for Worcester firefighters. It was in December that they lost the 6 in the cold storage fire, and this December they lost another one in a 5-alarm fire. He got trapped inside the building. So I would ask that you keep his family in your prayers over the holiday weekend, over the holiday period. I'm sure it's going to be a tough year for those folks up in Worcester. The other thing is I would like to formally request of the president that on behalf of the council, that I be appointed to the sewer subcommittee as a representative of the council on that committee. And I would like to do that as soon as possible so I can start attending those meetings and start getting up to speed on what's going on with the sewer project in the town of Coventry, please. Other than that, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, however you celebrate. Enjoy your time with your family because tomorrow's not guaranteed. So enjoy every day that you get. Live it like it's your last because, you know, when the man upstairs calls you home, it's going to be your last. So enjoy every day you can. Have a great holiday. Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Dixon?
Well, good evening, everyone, and I'll start by wishing you all a Happy New Year. I'm looking forward to being the District 1 representative and also being interested in what is happening in our entire community. So I'm looking forward to a good year, and I hope that you all have a healthy and happy year. I'll just give you a brief update about what I've been doing since I was elected. Actually, the night before the election, I attended a meeting sponsored by the EPA, who presented a 5-year update on the former Pachillo Farm. And I learned that even after all these years, they've still discovered 2 emerging chemicals that they did not know existed. And I'm happy to report that they have ordered the equipment that will be put into their power station, or not power station, but their pumping station, so that they can start remediating those 2 chemicals. So it was a surprise to me, as I live only 2 blocks from that place, that we're still discovering new things on that site. And it also reminds me that decisions that are made many, many years ago still have impacts on us many, many years later. Also, since the election, I met with Mr. Wazika twice, and he is setting up an orientation for me so that I will be meeting with department heads this week on 2 days of this week and also immediately after the holidays. I also talked with Mr. Sean Sullivan, who is having issues with the turbines behind his home, and we'll be setting up a meeting to have a face-to-face. I have been on his property. He wasn't home at the time I visited him, but we will be meeting again. When I was also campaigning, I toured District 1 area, and I noticed that the solar farm on Lewis Farm Road did not have any buffer on one side of it. So when I met with Mrs. Wells and Mr. Wagner, I asked Mrs. Wells if she could please talk with the project engineer for that project about doing something about that, really what is a major scar on the property. And she said that tonight she told me that is one of her top priorities, to talk to the project engineer to see if something could be done about that particular buffer for that solar farm. Since the election, I've had over 6 hours of meetings with constituents These are a couple of the primary issues that they've identified for me. They're interested in what is the status of the remediation plan for the property owners, especially along Route 102, concerning flickering and other issues that they're having. So they're very concerned on being updated as soon as possible on the remediation plan. They're also interested in knowing how soon we'll be able to have before us our updated comprehensive plan and a review of all the ordinances that support it. It's very important that we update our plan as quickly as possible. I've been told that it might be on the agenda in January or February, and I would urge us all on the council to please try to get it on the agenda as quickly as possible so that we can start doing the vetting process so that we can have a comprehensive plan that truly represents what the people in this community want. And of course, going along with that are the updated ordinances. And another issue that was mentioned to me, not very often by people in District 1, is issues relating to the sewer. And people in District 1 believe that because sewers will never come out to us, we don't need to worry about it. And I try to represent always that every issue, whether it's related to one district or not, is an issue that affects all of us in the community. So we in District 1 need to be thinking about what we can do to help resolve the issue problems. And people in the rest of the district really need to consider how solar farms and turbines affect or could affect all of us. So I'm trying to promote a feeling of unity and community among all of us, in that we're just not working for the constituents in our own district, but we're working for our whole community. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. LaBossere?
Right. Just want to mention that the Christmas celebration at the community center was a terrific event. The president and I, we both attended that. It was a chilly night, but a lot of people. It was an excellent time, and it was a great showing by a lot of the folks in town. Secondly, the only other thing that I've got is that beginning this Saturday, right here in Chambers, I'll be beginning my town hall talks, a little conversation, a little coffee in a very informal setting. I try to put it open to everybody who's got any, and it's open to all, not just people of District 2. We can come in and talk about some things, throw about some ideas. I call it a little think tank, but it'll be from 9:30 until 11:30 a.m. I'm also going to be scheduling it. I have them scheduled January 12th. These are Saturdays, February 16th and March 16th, same time frame. Once a month, we're to go over some of the issues that are facing us, possible solutions, thoughts, opinions, all are welcome. I had invited President McGee to the first one, but he's going to be unavailable this Saturday. So at this point, I will open to any of the other. I can have one other member there that doesn't create a quorum. But if any of my other council colleagues are interested, they can join me on Saturday morning. That's all I have, Mr. President.
All right, and for District 3, everything's been going pretty smooth, and I am going to join the Vice President and myself on the 12th of January to have the think tank and the coffee hour to discuss any concerns that people, so I encourage people that have any concerns to show up, and the President and Vice President will be there to discuss whatever concerns, the constituents out there. Everything else in District 3 has been going smooth. I have not received any complaints, any problems. Everything's going good, so hopefully it continues that way, but that'll be it for council updates. The next item on the agenda will be,
Mention something.
yes.
I'd be happy to attend on Saturday,
If
so I
you-
can see how an expert does this.
Oh. Well, when you attend, you'll see how an expert runs it then.
Good, thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda will be a presentation by the Finance Director, John Arnett, regarding the current expenditures for fiscal year 19 budget. Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you, President. Thank you, council members. It marks just barely over 3 months since I've sat in that chair. So it's been an intriguing 3 months. And as I said, from day one, been up to a challenge, and it's been, Coventry has not disappointed. Before I get into this, this is hopefully this will be a monthly report to the council members. So I urge you to take notes. Please let me know what you want to see going forward. This is just, a baseline, so that way we have information. So every day in the terms of transparency to everybody, to know where the money is being spent and how it's being spent. And it's something that should be done, and I'm glad to do this. So again, this is just a baseline. Let me know how you'd like to have it presented, any additional information, things of that nature as we move forward. So, and I'd be remiss to say as well that I did my first week here, I actually walked around and saw some of the vehicles from DPW, and I've been to the Parks and Rec, and I've seen the Capitol State in this town. The first day at DPW, they were welding a new floor to a truck. So I can't wait to get out to the school as well to see what the state is over there too. All right. So on slide 1. This is what we're just going to be going over. Just a quick overview of what we're doing here. Again, this is just from October. The reason why this one is October rather than November is it takes about a week to a week and a half for everything to process through, to do all the reporting, and then I need to compile all the reporting. So I can provide this on a monthly basis on the second meeting of every month. So this one right here, this is why you're seeing October versus November. We're going to just go a quick overview of our revenues, then a quick rundown of our spending for each department. So I just did a general spending levels as we work through. Then I've heard some inquiries about the Moody's report, so I'm just going to go through the highlights of that, and I will forward off that report to you as well, both of you as well, to make sure that you can read that in its entirety. I think I left a hard copy up there for you to go over. And then
That is on the website. The Moody's report is on the website.
oh yeah, that's right, we did put that up. So I'll make sure that you have it as well. And then just leave off with some questions and some summary information. All right, so this is just our revenues. Just overall, I wanted to make sure that you saw where we are as far as what we actually budgeted, what the actual dollar figures were, and then what we're seeing from prior year. Now, again, this is as of October. You have a little bit of a negative when it comes to our total revenues on 1.26 over to the side. I've seen the cursory overview of November already, and those numbers are going to be much better. So, moving on, because this is the really important part that I find a lot of people really want to know where the money's going. So, first of all, we're just going to go with the town hall expenses. Now, this is just as you can see, what sits here. And then I took from last year, so you can have a year over year. Oh, it's right here. That's that page that I told you I gave you guys, and I didn't leave one for myself. So before we get into the spending, I wanted to make sure that you understand that it's all in context. So the context here is that it is October, so you want to think about it as a 33% rate. So you're thinking about a third of the way through the year, you're thinking 33%. Every department spends money differently. So Parks and Recs may not have as much spending at the beginning of the season versus in springtime when they need to ramp up getting ready for their spring. DPW is going to start ramping up because of the snow. You have different things. Each department acts a little differently. So that's something that you need to take into consideration while going through this. These are in percentages. So percentages talk about through a baseline. So as you talk about a budget, how someone is spending the money, sometimes whether it's enough or not enough, however that may be, those things fluctuate. So you have a dollar figure and a percentage. So just always keep that in mind, that some are really big numbers, some are really little numbers. So it's just as a percentage. At the end, I believe I do have the actual dollar figures if you'd like to look at the dollar figures as well at the end of the slide set. All right. With that, let's jump into the town hall expenses. Overall, we're really right on line. We're right on line with the 33% tracking for October. Is everybody on board on page? Okay. I would draw a little bit of attention to the board of canvassers this year. There's the expense of, I believe we pulled up one additional polling station that added to the expenses, and then they also had to order new envelopes, which increased the spending. Now, the board of canvassers does not have a large budget, and that's why I made note that sometimes you have large numbers and small numbers. So that's why you see a little bit greater than what it was year over year.
John, just want to stop it. On ours, it's only shades of gray. Can I assume that 2017 is the percentage to the left and 2018 is the percentage to the right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
We should print those out in color for you all next time. That is correct. So as you look from left to right, as you would see on this side, red would be on the left and blue would be on the right. It looks really much nicer this side than what you all see. But yes. Any other questions specifically about these town expenditures? That was one of the ones I wanted to point out. No? Okay. The next one, we're going to the police department. The police department is, again, pretty much right in line where it was last year. The reason why you're going to see on the police civilians dispatch and the police civilians off to those two do not have a 2017 is because of 2018, I'm sorry. 2018, they were teased out. They were actually separated from the budget, so that's why you're seeing the first budget year here. And as you would, again, assume that you should be taking around the 33%, which we're pretty close to.
The reason they were removed out of the regular police budget is the state has a new transparency portal, and the requirements for reporting to that required that we break out the civilian employees, dispatch, and we make them separate and apart from the regular police in reporting. So that's why you're seeing those different this year for the first time.
Thank you. I also think it's just really interesting. We're here with the police department. I love numbers, so I just think it's interesting when you see police department has a little bit higher spending right now. I don't know to the bottom of why it's 36 and 37% this year, but considering it's pretty much the same as year over year, I'm wondering if, what's going on at the end coming into holiday season, or, maybe a lot of people love to speed and now their expenses go up. I don't know. But I do think they're really close to last year as well, so that's just the big takeaway there. All right. DPW expenses are next. Again, very similar to last year, but you can see that the spending here is actually pretty low at the beginning of the year, as far as under the 30% mark. And again, you're seeing the line items pretty much right where they are. Building maintenance is up a little bit higher than last year, but again, right at the 33%. All right, planning and zoning is next. I actually chose to include the Historic District Commission and the Economic Development. They do have a budget, but actually, they don't have a budget this year. I'm sorry, they don't have a budget this year. So that's why they were given no budget and no expenditures. So again, I would expect to see capital expenditures to kind of go up for maintenance and things of that nature without things like that. Any other questions do we have here? There's really not much difference. No? Okay. And then I grouped the last bit with public service. So we have the public library, human services, and the recreation department. Public library, almost exactly spot on from last year. Again, human services spot on, and the recreation department a little higher, but again, very similar to last year's spend rate. So you're not seeing a lot of variations from year over year as terms of percent to budget. I will note at the very end again that you will see overall spending year over year is actually decreased as far as a dollar figure is concerned. But as far as percentages, they're pretty much line for line.
John, would it be difficult to add a rounded dollar amount along with the percentages?
No,
That
that's
would be
actually
more
not that
helpful to
hard.
me. But I mean, in your bar graphs, to see the percentage and what the,
Would
slash
you like
the
it right
dollars.
above the bar? I can put it right on the top of the bar.
Great, that would be
All right.
helpful to me
I'll
to
do
see
something
the
like that
dollars
for you.
along with the percentages, and then in the way that you have it there.
All right. I was thinking that might be good too. All right. Any other suggestions for the expenditures? So is there anything that you'd like me to tease out a little bit more? Or is this just a general overview for month over month?
I think maybe as we go on, month
All
to
right.
month, we may come up with stuff, but I appreciate.
Absolutely. Ed will be more than happy to let me know, and whatever you guys would like to do, more than happy. All right. So one of the things that when you're looking at a town expenditures, the things that how I view it, I should say, and how a lot of investors and a lot of people would view this town, is you look at a municipality over the long term, not just one cross section in time. You know, I love statistics and numbers and investing, so it's all fun. But you look at things over a lifetime, a span. A municipality, Coventry's been around for 177 years, I believe it is. So we kind of have to think about it as a big picture. So I wanted to provide a sort of a big picture right now, year over year revenues to expenditures, with a beginning and ending of what would look like to our general fund. It's a little bit small on the screen, I apologize, but there's a lot of information here. Can I zoom in on this, by the way? Let's see if I can zoom. No, I got this.
Just spread it, Joe.
Yes. No? Okay. Mr. Rosica. As he's going through this, can you just highlight the revenues for me? Yeah,
Doesn't like it with the.
it doesn't like you. All right. So I'll just point out this piece here. I'm right now, by the way, what I'm doing, council, is I'm actually highlighting with the cursor, just going around the revenue section, just to highlight what we're looking at. So the revenue section up here is what we're seeing here. We're seeing our total real estate and property taxes. And as you're seeing the slow increase, as every resident of Coventry probably already knew, is slowly increasing over time. And that's what you're going to see down here as well. You have, you would expect this in most municipalities. You would expect to see a slow increase. You have inflation that you have to worry about, expenditures and things like that. So you would tend to see this. Expenses as well. Down here, this is all available online. So if you would like to open this up online, go right to our website. You can download it. You'll see our expenditures. And a lot of times I hear some concern about the debt that's been outstanding and bonding that's been happening. Well, on this expenditures piece, you will see our debt service principal balance, and you can see how that has increased, not significantly. This is a lot of the other pieces, but this is our principal and interest payments. So it has increased over time. But that's where that is. That does not include the sewer. That is a separate type of a entity. The way that sewer is treated is that it is a business enterprise, so it sort of flows into a different number. It's sort of looked at as its own sustainable type of an enterprise. So that's why you don't see it necessarily as its own little piece, because it should be self-supported. And then at the very bottom, I would like to also highlight at the very bottom here, you'll see the beginning and ending of our general fund. I mentioned the sewer for a reason, was because the support, as mentioned, which we'll talk about in a couple of moments, where this Moody's says about the support of the general fund, it doesn't show here. Because of the way that because the sewer enterprise is treated as a separate type of a business operating expense, it washes out. So that number that you see on the bottom there is not the dollar figure that you would see in your bank account. So when I go in and I look at our bank account and see how much money do we actually have, it's not actually that, because the sewer fund owes the general fund money. So that's how that worked, and that's why there's been a memorandum, and that's why it's stopped, and that's why we'll talk about what Moody's highlighted in a moment. So that is only a couple $1 million and difference, and we're working on the rate study right now in order to get that back up to speed. which I'm sure we'll be working and talking a whole lot soon, Cody. All right. Does anybody have any questions?
John, you should just make note on the fund balance ending is, you'll notice over $1 million more than the beginning. That is an unaudited number. That number is not going to remain that high, but it's probably going to be about 600,000 or 700,000 more
Very good.
than the beginning. It was 18 was much better than 17, but don't expect it to be a full million and change higher once they get done auditing. Yeah. Well, this is last fiscal. This is the 18. That was as of.
Correct. He was talking about these are preliminary numbers for fiscal year 2018. We're still in the middle of the audit process. These are not finalized, as things can sort of come to light. But I felt confident enough with the information out there, that the variance that would happen and any changes that would take place wouldn't be terribly significant. It also, I would like to point out one little thing, and if Nick, if anybody has any questions about, but essentially there's a $200,000 blip that was a liability fell off the books. So if, in short, we recognized an extra $200,000 that we weren't expecting to get. Essentially, that's because if there's a lawsuit pending against the town, you're required to assume that it went out. And if that liability goes away and that lawsuit stops, and then we didn't have to pay out the money, it comes right back. So that's why you'll see at the very end of fiscal year 2017, that bottom number should begin the next day's balance, essentially. So what ended up happening is one thing fell off the book, and that's why you don't have the actuals meeting the end of last year. I'll point it out on the screen for one moment for the audience. One moment. So that would be right here. If you all download it, it would be right here to right here. And I keep on changing it. It's these bottom two numbers right here. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Under the debt service, does this include all the bonds? Or do you break that down somewhere else that we haven't gotten to yet?
So this would include the bonds payments that we make all the bonds debt service that we do. So
Not counting sewer.
not counting sewer.
Not counting sewer.
So we're talking the infrastructure bond that took place. That was one. There was, I believe, there's a bunch going on now, and I'm drawing
Is there
a
any way
blank.
that
Yeah.
we could get that information so we could see where all of our bonds are?
You
so
know
our
what? It might be a
total-
good idea is we do get a debt service book every year from the actuaries at the end of every fiscal year. What might be a good idea is to break down those schedules, and I can probably show you where the schedules are. I do have one of those. I can
I
compile
think it
a
would just
report.
be really helpful so we could see
Yeah.
all the bonds that are out there, how much.
It's okay. I'll see what I can. I'll see how it would be, how I can put that together in a really good visual. It's a kind of a little bit more of a complex.
Now,
kind of-
how about the sewer debt? Where would that be in our?
So let's see if it's on the end of the statements here. I did not print out that piece in the fiscal year 2017. If you're looking for that specific number, you would go to page, and this is for everybody as well. Yep, the 2017. You would go to page 14. Page 14 is the statement of net position.
Okay,
And then you would go to business type activities. And in that center column, you would go down to your total liabilities. That represents the total amount of debt regarding the business type activities. Now,
the 22 million?
the 22,410,000.
Okay,
Okay, so that number also may include one other fund, but at the same time, that is the primary. I'll get that to you as well. You can write that down.
Okay, and now how about all the unfunded pensions? Is that also included?
So
in
that
it?
would be included into this fiscal year 2017 book as well. That, the unfunded pensions are wrapped up into the total liabilities section. So if you're still on page 14, you would notice it would be wrapped up into the governmental activities, that's column 1. I'm sorry, everyone, I did not put this together, but again, it's online, so if you have any questions, it's page 14 is what we're looking at. It is, at the very bottom, you'll see the total liabilities, and that total liabilities would be $222 million. Now, that is a big number.
Yes.
The total pensions that are in that, it gets wrapped up into that number. So I actually broke down, I got an email on a Sunday, and I actually opened this up, and I had some questions myself. So what I did is I broke down some of these total pensions, and again, we do get an audit every single year, or an actuarial table every single year. So it would be, those numbers come pretty much every single year. So that it would be one time. I couldn't really be able to break it down. I'm not an actuary. I like it,
Yeah.
but I'm not an actuary. So as an overview, the town debt, when it comes to the net pension liability, is about $14 million. The police net pension liability is about $64 million. The SRP, $17 million. The school ERS is $65 million. OPEB, we have that as a pay-as-you-go, which is absolutely in line as well, but that is just over, it's almost $4 million, it's 3.9. So the total net pension liabilities sits at $158 million. That is the big big thing in the room as a whole. So you pull out all the pieces out, which you get of your net position. So if you looked at the net position of everything total, at the bottom of government activities, you have 132, include business type activities, you have 120, but essentially the remaining other, you have about $69 million of outstanding other long-term debt. That includes everything, okay?
Okay.
That's everything. So that's a whole bunch of information I just threw at you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I just make a comment, you mentioned about the pension liability, it is a big number, 158.
Yes,
But
sir.
we're fortunate that we don't have OPEB responsibility, just $4 million. Some towns have double the pension responsibility in OPEB, so we're
Right.
fortunate that we
I will
don't
also
have it.
make mention that we are, yes, these numbers are big, and there's a tendency to have sticker shock when you see very large numbers. However, taking into consideration the revenues, the fact that we are meeting the arc, the fact that there's still growth, there's a lot of potential in this town for growth and to diversify the revenue streams, not just being on being on residents. There's a lot of potential for growth here. One thing that I'll also mention is a lot of times it never enters into a discussion, but a number can change over time because $1 million in today's money is not the same as $1 million 20 years from now. $1 million in 1950 was a lot more than $1 million now. So if you can maintain and pay down over time and grow and have interest as interest rates and as inflation takes place, that $1 million or that net pension, I wouldn't say net pension, the total debt net position will fall. So that's, as you can grow, as things happen, that nominal rate, that dollar figure actually does change over time. So that doesn't enter into a lot of conversations, but I think it's important to just keep in the back of your mind, because we are a municipality and we do have to think 5+ years at a time. All right, any other questions?
If the town, and I'm trying to look at it from your point of view,
Okay.
if the town has so much potential for growth, and given the fact that $1 million today doesn't mean the same thing as $1 million in 1955, does not negate the fact that according to the most recent Moody's report, they have again attached a negative outlook to our bond rating, which, depending on which way you look at it, may not be a bad thing, because maybe it'll curtail the town of Coventry from borrowing any more money because the interest rate will be higher with the negative outlook on it. My only question is, does that negative outlook affect the interest rates that we currently pay on the bonds? Are any of those interest rates variable?
Nope.
And-
It does not. Oh, sorry.
And according to the report that Councilwoman Bacon was nice enough to show me that she's in possession of, part of Moody's reasoning for attaching that negative outlook moving forward is because of the high pension liabilities that we have.
Yes, sir.
And according to Moody's report, I think their wording is verbatim, consistent underfunding of those pensions on behalf of the town of Coventry. Did we not enter into a pension mediation program with the town of Coventry to bring that, with the state of Rhode Island, to bring that funding up to the level that was acceptable to the state actuarial?
So, a couple questions. I'll try to answer every one of them, and if I missed one, just please ask again. Our funding levels have been increasing as far as the total pension liability is falling over time. So as of 2017, I'm just looking at this real quick. I'll take the town, for example, because I remember that one off the top of my head. In 2017, it was at 39.89% funded. Now it's at 42 I can't remember, just over 42%. So it's going up. The police one, which is the most substantial for municipality, is in this report was at 17.5%. It's now at 19.9%. Yes, these are really small movements.
It
but
was
is
below
growing.
10 just a couple of years ago.
Yes.
Agreed. I know.
We have been
it
paying
is-
extra. That's where the
yeah.
money's going.
It's
though.
you are correct. It is absolutely a large. It is a large number. I'm not in trying to negate the fact that it's a large number, but it's a workable problem. Is all I'm saying.
I'm trying to understand, and because you're now our finance director, I look at you to help me to understand why, with the improvements that we've been making, did Moody's see fit to put a negative outlook on our bond rating moving forward? Because it was there before, and we worked very, very hard and went and met face to face with Moody's
I'll just skip right
to get that removed.
I'll just skip right to the Moody's summary then. But real quick to answer your previous question regarding the bonds are not variable. They are according to an amortization schedule, so that there may be changes in principal payments going forward depending upon whatever that bond was. So every bond is a little different. I have every single bond book out there, and I'd be more than happy to show you every single one of them, as well as any of the schedules as well. So as far as the Moody's summary is concerned, and what they saw about the town of Coventry, is that they were looking at, so as Moody's would look at a town, they're looking at it from the outside. They're looking at it as far as somebody that's going to invest in taking on the debt of the town. If we're going to go out, what are the concerns? So one of the things that they've looked at was the strengths, and then they do a weaknesses. So the strength side, they looked at the stable the general fund, and as I showed before, the fund balance was pretty stable and it was growing a little bit. And then they also stated an improved annual pension funding. So yes, it is going up. We are contributing accordingly. It is steadily rising. We're not missing any of those payments. That's why they included that also as a strength. So it's a double-edged sword with the pension. Manageable debt burden and OPEB liability. That's the OPEB. That's those other post-employment benefits. That's as a pay-as-you-go. That is completely in regulations as well. And it's, as I mentioned before, it's over about $3 million. But it's manageable, and as well as the other debt burdens is manageable according to what our revenues are. This strength as well, it says a predicted rate study. You can ask Mr. Wazika. I at one point wrote on his board rate study, and would go into his room every day and hit the board and say, where is it? So that is a predicted strength. Now the weakness is what they gave 2 bullet points, and I also gave a quote from them on the study, and they said the ongoing support of the general fund of the sewer operations, and so again, this is of 2017, so they're looking at those numbers prior to the stopping of all movements and all additional support and the rate study. So that was the general weakness, because they're looking at the general fund and the ability to repay any debt. So if the general fund continues to support the sewer program, then that is looked at as a large negative because of the fact that it's drawing directly from our fund balance. And then on top of that, it's a business enterprise fund. It is required to generate 1.25. So for 25 cents for every dollar that it sends out. For every dollar it costs, 25 cents come in. So it can support itself. So it's not a good thing.
In our conversations with them, the primary reason was the sewer fund.
Was the sewer fund.
The pension is a minor piece of it because we are decreasing our unfunded liability every year. That is going down. It's going down at a very good rate, but we still got a problem. We still got a problem with both, and that's part of it. But it's primarily the sewer enterprise fund with the fact that we're supplementing that out of the general fund, out of the reserve.
He
That
did
was
mention
their
it as a
big-
weakness, though. It was mentioned on weakness, like I said. When we were talking with Moody's, yes, it was a large number, which is why it's on the weakness. But it's also on the other side because of the fact that Coventry has been diligent to it, has been decreasing that net unfunded rate. So it has both sides of it. If we weren't doing this at that rate and we weren't putting and contributing to this level, you would only see it on one side. But also be aware that this is a general requirement. The way that they changed the rules, they required municipalities to then realize that net liability. So all municipalities across the country, this has been a kind of a problem as well. So Coventry is not its own ship. It's in the same boat as a lot of others. We're doing a good job here. So yes, big number, but again, we're doing what we need to do. Good. All right. The main takeaway from Moody's, and this was again on the first page of the summary, and again, I will get this to you all, but I wanted to pull out this quote just because of the fact it's the most powerful piece of it. If you want, it was the thesis statement. The negative outlook reflects the town's general government and financial support to its sewer operation that has resulted in a decline of the available reserves. That, in a nutshell, is why. Fix that problem, you'll pretty much remove the negative outlook. That's pretty much what the gist of what our conversation looked like with them. I asked the other follow-up question was, how do you move up from an A1 to another type of a rating? And they specifically stated growth in the assessed value, growth in sort of business community, things like that nature, sort of a population change kind of a thing. Would you mind if I passed out one little piece of information? I'll just pass it out to everybody that's here as well as the council. It's just, you can find this online. It's everywhere. When we're talking about Moody's rates us as on a scale. And the way that scale looks, I would just present to you how that scale looks. So one moment. Pass it down to everybody as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That's what I'm, that's fine. That's fine. All right. I've seen this a lot of times. All right, so I wanted to pass this around just to make sure that everybody is aware of what we're talking about. We are in, again, this is how everybody else would look at our town. When it says, are you going to invest in our town? Would you take on our town's debt, considering all the information out there, which is what everybody sees with our financial statements. They look through it all. They know all the pension liability. They know our revenues. They know everything, including our education enrollment is included in a bond sale. So all of that information gets included into what an investor looks at. But it all gets boiled down to a rating. And each one of these ratings essentially carries on the cost of a bond. So right now we are at an A1. Now they put a negative outlook that doesn't really, it's not quote on the scale, but it is there. It's going to be built in. Because as there's negative, you're going to have a slight uptick in any bonding that goes out. But again, I wanted to point out where we are. We're in the investment grade. We're smack dab pretty much in the center. And we have a very long way to fall before it becomes into the speculative or non-investment grade. And we're really close. We're at the next one more stage up, and hence why I asked that question. What would we take to move us up a rung? Because that would be, you would see a significant savings in any debt service that you were to go out to market for. So there's work to be done, but from an investor's point of view, it's the town of Coventry debt is still a safe buy. It's still good. It's still a good buy. The concern of being repaid is not really there, considering how far you'd have to fall before there'd be risk there. So I just wanted to make sure that I passed that out to everybody, make sure that everybody was on the same page when it came to how Coventry is viewed, and when we're talking about the ratings and where we stand. All right. And let me get back up to that one. All right. So that was basically it. I just wanted to, and I'm getting a little bit, spent a little bit more time than I wanted to, but I'm sorry, everybody. But this is the meeting that I had with everybody else. And I wanted to come into Coventry and begin communication between all departments. And that was the first thing I did. So that's what we're talking about. Craig Levitz talked about as well. But we talked about policies, procedures. One of the things that we started talking about, as well as Mr. Wazika would talk as well, is that we're starting to work towards a foundational sewer administrative process, so which would capture all of those pieces that might have fallen through before. So starting from the ground, work our way back up. So that was there. I've also heard a lot of concerns across all departments about capital improvements and staffing. The second, I asked the police colonel, and I've looked at the costs as well. Everything looks to be on time and on budget. The next piece of that bond is on track to go out at the right time, so that way we're not losing any timing when it comes to funding that project. And the Auditor General's letter, I'm still waiting on. I also put this quote directly from an email that I received on, I think it was December 2nd. It says, at this time, I can't provide a definitive timeline on when we will have a draft report to you to review. I've been bothering them. I want that letter. From what they told me, I would love to have that letter and disseminate to the entire town, but I just waiting on them. And I will give that to everybody as soon as I possibly can. All right, and with that, do we have any additional questions?
Is there any council members have any more questions? Okay, go ahead, Councilman Bacon.
Just one more? Whoops.
Sure.
Do you know when you're going to report on this, or Baxter Dance Row? Will we have
If
any
you
type?
if you'd like Baxter Dance Row to come in, we can probably schedule that for the second week of January as well.
Okay.
To go over a deeper dive into 2017.
It would probably be helpful for the council and for the residents to hear that.
Well, I'll try. I'll
I've already done that. I've contacted Dance Road. They're scheduled to come in on the 10th.
So
January.
yeah, so the 10th sounds like a possible time we can have them come in.
Thank you,
Thank
John.
you.
Thank you,
You're welcome. I was glad to help.
Quick.
Are there any other questions for the council? Okay, John, thank you very much. I look forward, you're gonna be doing this on a monthly basis?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Great. I appreciate the time you put into it.
And again, if anything should come up that you want me to change around, like for example, the dollar figures included, I would be more than happy to switch it according to the council's request.
Well, if any of us have any concerns or any, we'll definitely email you or Tom.
Absolutely.
And get it to you. Thank you very much again. Okay, the next item on the agenda. Madam Clerk, would you read it, please? The consent agenda?
Next, we have tax abatements, $39,043.50, and additions, $10,762.69.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. Yeah, we're gonna, unless somebody has any concerns on the, well, actually, why don't you, speak on the consent? Anybody, any questions to, for the tax abatements and, to, tax assessor?
Overview, basically, the brunt of these this month were from through the appeal process. That's not on. Try that switch. Testing, okay. All right, excuse me. So, this particular batch of abatements, the major portion of it are from the appeal process that begins when the tax bills go out and it lasts 90 days. And the process starts with the tax assessor, which then I get 45 days to respond, and then they get another 30 to respond back to that. So right now is what you're gonna see the abatements from that is what the brunt of that is. That's why it's a little bit larger than the past few batches have been. A couple of them were done through the board of review. I've tried to handle the brunt of them at my level. It's better for everybody. It's a easier process for everyone, and so that's what you'd see. If you have any questions on any of the specific ones, I can tell you why I did what I did. And then we have the additions, which again are the prorated tax bills from new construction. They're going to start weaning off. Actually, we're going to see probably a lot less of those at this point because that's how the year is ending on December 31st. You'll probably not get very much of the additional revenues going forward.
I do like the way you present this to us. It makes it a lot easier versus what we had in the past.
Good, good. Glad to hear that.
Are there any questions from the council concerning the abatements? Well, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the tax abatement.
Make that motion.
I second the
We
motion.
have a second. Any questions, any concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, the next two items we're going to take together. Madam Clerk, would you read item 2 and 3, please?
New application by David Thatcher for private detective license. And then we'll have a renewal application for Kevin Beasy for private detective license.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the applications.
A motion to approve the two licenses.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Okay, the next one, item 4. Madam Clerk, would you read that, please?
This is a resolution authorizing the interim town manager to award a contract for a part-time engineering service to Crossman Engineering and Company.
Okay, Mr. Manager, would you care to discuss that, explain that to the council, please?
Yes, I will. The town has a full-time engineer on staff. Unfortunately, he's going out on sick leave. It's going to be an extended sick leave, so we are in turn without the services of an engineer. We need an engineer to provide various oversight and review of planning documents, building permits, streets, pretty much anything and everything involving the town. So what we've done is, because it's a professional service, we did not do an RFP. Our DPW director, Kevin McGee, went out, and we have 8 different engineering companies that came in and did proposals to us. They gave us price list breakdowns. The council, you have in your packet the matrix of the 8 different companies, along with the payouts that they, or the charges that they were looking at. What we're envisioning for starting is approximately 20 hours a week, and we've done this before, prior to Engineer Joyle being hired about 8-9 years ago. We had an engineering firm who happens to be Crossman Engineering, and they were our on-site, part-time, approximately 20 hours a week engineering company that did all of that. The upside of going to this instead of bringing in somebody on a permanent or a part-time basis, we're able to utilize the expertise of various people instead of just the one that we're going to have in-house. Even though the one in-house will do the day-to-day, most of the stuff, we're envisioning 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and they'll handle. But in the event that there's something out of that person's range, they've got the expertise and other engineers on their team that'll be able to handle it. Looking at the price, if you look at the matrix, Crossman Engineering was by far the lowest bidder or the lowest proposal of anybody. In fact, about half the cost of some and even less than that on others. Why, you might ask, are they so low? Well, they're the kind of company that apparently likes working with municipalities. They treated us good the last time. They happen to have the lowest bid or lowest proposal 10 years ago, and they've done it again at like I said, a substantial savings to the town. It's something we need to do, and I highly recommend that you approve that we sign this open-ended and it's not a permanent contract. You have a copy of the contract in. We can close out the contract at any time. I'm envisioning funding this through the contingency fund because this was something that wasn't planned. Mr. Joyle is still being paid as the engineer because he is out on sick leave. So we need to find the funding source for it, and that's where we're looking at taking it from. That's what the contingency fund is for, situations like this.
I might add that we had used them quite a few years ago, and they were very satisfied to work. And I am impressed that the numbers are so much less than a lot of the
They
other
are.
firms.
They
So,
are. I also gave you a list of some of the projects that they've been involved with in Coventry, as well as one of their own handout listing projects that they've done throughout Rhode Island, in Mass, and I believe there were some Connecticut ones as well. I have the principal from the company as well as the engineer. That would be our on-site engineer are here tonight. In fact, it's the same engineer that was here 10 years ago. So he knows the town, knows the people, and he's going to be able to hit the ground running if you authorize me to sign this tonight.
well, Crossman Engineering is a very, very reputable company, and they've been around for years. And the two gentlemen, you two want to come up, please, and introduce yourselves?
Oh, thank you. Is this on?
It's on.
Okay, I'm Stephen Cabral. I'm a licensed engineer, and I'm the president of Crossman Engineering. And with me is Bruce Hagerman, who is the main contact for the Coventry project. And as was indicated, Bruce was the acting town engineer about 10 years ago, and he's looking forward to being back if you're willing to accept us.
Are there any questions that the council may have?
I just have one question. Is Mr. Crossman, who is on the planning commission, in any way connected with this?
He used to own the business. He is
Yeah.
no longer affiliated. The business has been sold. He's no longer affiliated with the business. Am I correct in saying that?
You are correct. There is no financial connection.
Okay, because our charter would not allow that. Thank you.
Oh, yes, and just to clarify, Crossman Engineering was formed back in 1983, and back then I was the first employee. Ray Crossman is the original founder, and Ray Crossman retired back in 1999, and since then, I've been in charge, so it's almost 20 years now. It's amazing how quickly time flies.
Yes, it does. Yes. Are there any other questions?
DPW Director, Kevin, are you comfortable? Because it's going to be 90% of your projects that they're overseeing as far as, other than building.
Good evening. Yes, I'm the one who looked at did the interviews on the 8 firms, broke that down to 3 firms to do an interview, physical interview with. Crossman came out by far the best qualified candidate, and I feel comfortable with Mr. Cabral and with Bruce through his prior use for the town. And I feel that they offer the services that we didn't have before with environmental, with bridge construction, through stormwater, and with the plan reviews that we're going to be requiring. So I feel very comfortable with them.
Thank you, Kevin. Ed, as the acting town manager, are you comfortable?
I am extremely comfortable, and I highly recommend that we hire them.
Mr. Solicitor, aren't we in the habit of lowest qualified bidder unless we have a legitimate reason to bypass? We generally go with the lowest qualified bidder on projects in town?
In my experience, yes.
Thank you. That's all from
Bacon,
me.
you have a question?
How much is in the contingency fund? You said that's where this is going to be funded?
Currently in the contingency fund is $200,000. The exact number is, it's not on the tip of my tongue, but it should be $200 and some thousand in there right now.
And this is open-ended, this contract?
It is open-ended until we either don't need them anymore or we decide to possibly continue with this. I've run the numbers. At a 20-hour per week, the cost is actually cheaper than what we pay for an engineer with benefits and all of the others. This is, granted, with the engineer, we have 35 hours. With the company, we have 20. But we found in the last time that 20 hours was more than sufficient, almost 99% of the time, to get done in 20 hours a week.
Okay, and the other 7 proposals, we didn't receive any, we didn't get copies of any of the proposals, so we couldn't compare ourselves. Council members couldn't compare
We gave you,
ourselves.
I gave you the breakdown on the cost that they gave us.
Oh, I know, but not the actual proposals from all of these other companies themselves, so we couldn't review them ourselves.
Well, this is the actual, it is the same thing. It's a breakdown of whatever, all the cost. That's what it is.
But not from themselves, with their letterhead, their breakdown costs. We don't have anything like that.
Well, we don't really need it. We have the breakdown of the costs from the companies. I mean, we don't need their letterhead to let us know. This is cost from the interviews and from everything that was done. I mean, this is a schematic of the cost. So, yeah, we don't have their letterhead, but it's really not necessary.
Normally in anything like this, when I'm recommending something, we've always just given the one that we've gone with. And if you want something later on, we can always give it to you. Kevin has the files, but I mean, it's something that,
Mr. President, if anyone's insinuating that those numbers were just made up, I have them here, but there's no need of giving, 8 different firms, all of them. We took the criteria, we put down the pricing for the engineers and for the different disciplines throughout the process and provided that to you. If you want to get copies of all the actual pages that show the firm's letterhead, I'll be more than happy to provide that to you after. These numbers were not made up.
I don't want
don't.
numbers. This
don't.
list tells me everything. Any other questions for the council?
Yeah, if I may. We're working on a 20-hour-a-week schedule, but I know from working on town projects previously through an outside contractor that there are times when our engineer has been on the job throughout the day in collecting data from that job to bring back to the town of Coventry and make as part of his report. Are we going to have a representative from Crossman Engineer to be able to do that? And I'm talking specifically about paving jobs, when Bob would come out and spend the whole day on the paving job and get a copy of all the slips.
Yeah, those projects would be in site-specific, and the funding for that would be in the actual bid. We would know what those are going to be, so engineering costs, when we do the estimate for that.
No, I understand
And
that,
yes,
Kevin.
they would be available at 8 hours for whatever we
Okay,
need.
that's-
They'd be available for meetings at night. If we need additional people, this is only the average for the day-to-day operations. Any additional, if we need somebody to go to DEM for an environmental issue or to go to DOT for bridge analysis, that those would be above and beyond. But we have at least as a minimum the 4 hours. Anything above and beyond, we would utilize that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wazika, what's your estimate of how many weeks we will need this service?
we will be looking at least till the end of this fiscal year, which estimated would be slightly less than $50,000 for the next 6 months. With a couple of extra weeks, so it'd be a little bit more, so it'd probably be about 56,000 from now until the end of the fiscal year.
So when we get to the end of the fiscal year, if we still need a continuation of this, will we be able to?
We will be
assess this situation?
We will be evaluating this as the year goes on, as well as how Bob, Mr. Joyle is doing and where he is with his sick time and the whole process. But yes, we'll be evaluating it as it goes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from the council? All right, hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to accept this resolution.
Motion to accept.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Any other questions, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Motion carries. Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. The next item will be licenses. Madam Clerk, would you read item 1 under category E?
Application for a peddler renewal, JoJo's Cupcake LLC for 90-day peddler's license.
Now, this has came in front of us quite a few times. Is there anybody here from JoJo's Cupcakes? Would you like to come up and tell us a little bit about you? And I think I've seen you here before. In case any from the council has any questions? No cupcakes? You didn't bring any cupcakes with you? No? All right.
It's like bribery if I do that. Business is great. I just celebrated my 7th year anniversary. I did it with Pink Heels. You probably know who they are, the firemen, the policemen, and everything's good. I left the corporate world and I do it full time and I love it.
Good for you.
Yeah.
It's working out well.
If anybody has any questions, I'll answer them.
Does anybody have any questions? Oh, no, I don't think
Just
so yet.
just a comment.
Sure.
But phenomenal product.
Oh, thank you. I
Phenomenal
appreciate
product.
that. Thank
Next
you.
year would be nice. If
Thank you so
Anyway,
much.
the chair will entertain a motion to accept the license.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Okay. The next one, item number 2, Madam Clerk, would you read that for me, please?
Next, we have applications for renewal of campground licenses. The first one's Water's Edge, 119 Peckham Lane. Next one is Ahoy Campground, 249 McManus Road. And the next one is Hickory Ridge Campground, 584 Victory Highway.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to accept these licenses applications.
Make that motion.
And I'll second it for all three. It is for all three, is it correct?
Yes, it is for all 3. Okay, are there any questions? We have a motion, we have a second. Are there any concerns, any questions from the council?
Are these year-round facilities?
They are year-round. Actually, you want to give an explanation of that, Mr. Manager, as far as,
Sure. I don't believe Yoko has year-round, but I do know that Water's Edge and Hickory Ridge had a couple of sites that were year-round. I haven't gone out to check to see how many are there recently, but I know at one point they had them. It was very minimal numbers that they were allowed.
But don't.
It
don't-
never
don't-
met the percentage, I don't believe.
Right, don't we have an ordinance that allows for a certain percentage of year-round residents in the campgrounds if the owner's so? We do.
20% of the,
20% of total capacity is
Yes.
allowed as year-round to help with the tax base, to help with the.
Yep. And
the taxes
they
and stuff.
never, ever come anywhere near hitting that percentage.
and this
Okay.
has come in front of us every year for the last several years.
Yep.
With some controversy in the past, but I don't see any problems. I haven't had any issues. We haven't heard any issues, so the chair will entertain a motion to accept these licenses.
it's already been done.
Motion's
Okay,
already been
motion's
made,
already been
Mr.
made.
President.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Motion carries, ayes have it. Okay. The next item is item F. Madam Clerk,
Next, we have discussion on revising the 2019 Town Council meeting schedule as per Open Meetings Act due to change in FTM date.
Okay, I think that was pretty self-explanatory. Mr. Manager, you want to cover that?
Yes, it is. We currently have the calendar scheduled for June 11th for the FTM, which was, this calendar was approved prior to the election and the question 4. So we need to move this back to May 14th for the FTM.
This is not the new one.
No, this is not, we have not revised it. We waited till we were up in front of you to make sure that
So you're going to move it to May 14th.
we're going to have May 14th will be, and we have to make other questions and changes here if you're looking. May 14th would be the FTM.
And you will print out a new schedule? Okay.
Yes. Now, we have obviously a regular council meeting scheduled for May 13th. Do we want to have that meeting and then have the FTM the next day?
No, generally, we've never done that.
No, I don't.
I know that, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's necessary. Is there any concerns?
I think if we needed to add one, we could add one.
No, I think we're gonna have the FTM on the 14th. There's no need to have a.
So we're going to kill the third, okay. Now, going back into June,
Probably to
you-
reduce that to the 10th would make a normal council meeting.
correct, do you want to make that a normal meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so now June 10th will be a regular. Do you want to, in the past, we have gone to one meeting in the summer. Are we going to do the same thing?
I think we could eliminate the second meeting in the summer, and if we find the need to have another meeting, we can always add a meeting in if.
Yes, we can.
We have a lot on the agenda, a lot coming up, but we have, since I've been on the council, always had one meeting in the summer months, so I think that's a good idea.
Prefer to go with the
Nick, do we need to have the second one based on the charter, or can we kill it? All
I think
right,
we've done it in the past.
so we're going to kill June, July, and August?
Well, I'm just wondering whether it would be more pertinent to have the first or second meeting canceled. It doesn't matter to us. Normally the business at the beginning of the month is probably most important.
That's why I'm asking for what your input, what you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, what's the rest of the council's concern? Do you think the first or the second meeting, it
Well,
doesn't really?
we don't typically get a lot accomplished at the early meeting in July because it falls within the
4th of
week
July
of the
week.
4th of July holiday.
Yep.
And a lot of people go away for the week of the 4th and stuff, so why don't we
Likewise,
concentrate on the
August 13th.
second meetings of the month?
That's how I feel.
That might be a good idea. July 22nd and August 26th will be our meetings for the summer. So we will cancel out the July 8th meeting, which would probably be the week of the holiday, and we'll cancel out August 13th.
Okay.
That sound good to the council? The chair will, I guess we need a motion. The chair will entertain a motion to accept.
I'll make that motion to adjust the calendar to those dates.
Which will be published tomorrow and sent to you guys tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, and we have a second. No, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, motion carries. The next item, is item G for public hearing or discussion or action. Madam Clerk?
This is an application for Joseph Culpo for new business, new Class B, Rampo, Inc., doing business as Black Oak, 760 Tyoke Avenue, with victualling, live show entertainment.
Is there anybody here representing the company?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we open public hearing.
Second.
Good evening, everybody.
Just excuse me for a minute, I'm gonna open up public hearing, and I'll let you guys be the first to speak. Okay, we have a motion to open up public hearing, do I have a second?
In a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public hearing's open. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it's all about, and where is 760 Tyoke Avenue?
So we're looking to open a new establishment where the old Fat Bellies was in Coventry. I'm Justin Dalton Amin. I'm the president of the company. This is my partner, Josh Culpo, our head chef and partner, Rob Perney. Josh and I are owners of the Back 40 restaurant in North Kingstown. We opened that little over a year and a half ago. And we were presented with this opportunity to take a look at that space, and we thought it had really great potential. And we're looking to just, Josh and I own a place in Boston called Lulu's that we opened about 4.5 years ago. we just look to make nice, comfortable neighborhood spots. I mean, that's our goal. We're food focused. We were fortunate enough to meet Rob, who lives in Coventry, maybe a year ago, and brought him onto our team at Back 40. And since he became a member, he's really, he's a big foodie, and that kind of is who we are too. We just, we don't try to do anything over the top, but just good, wholesome. We like to call it, New England comfort food, in a nice, comfortable atmosphere. We try to open establishments where we see people a few times a week, maybe with the family on the weekends by themselves after work for a burger or whatever it may be. Place to catch a game, place to kick back and relax. That's what we try to do. Try to become a staple in the community.
Well, I think it's a great location. It was sad to see the other business fail, but I welcome you guys into, to open up a business like that. What will be the name of your business?
Black Oak is what we've chosen.
Black Oak.
So we're food focused again. So it's, kitchen is really is our main focus, and then kind of craft cocktails and all that. But really for us, it comes down to the food. Since we've started this business, and Josh and I have been, and Rob too, probably started when we were 15 years old, and it's kind of our motto that restaurants have that staying power where bars come and go. If you can put out good quality food that at the right price and people can appreciate that, they typically come back. Again, we're just looking to open a nice neighborhood spot, really.
Me being a resident of Coventry too, and I'm a Charo kid. I grew up in Hope Valley, so this is my demographic. When the opportunity presented itself, ironically enough, he had just received the email. I thought it was a really great opportunity, and it happened pretty quickly. But being a resident of Coventry, I feel like the stuff that we do at Back 40 would translate really well to Coventry and that same demographic. We serve really great quality food at a super good price point. And I think the town would really respond extremely well to what we do at Back 40 over at that space. So
Yeah, you can never get in.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
That's a good problem. Yeah, actually, we welcome restaurants. I mean, especially, good price, and like I said, that's a great location right there, and it has a lot of potential. And so is there any questions from anybody on the council?
Family-friendly environment?
100%, yeah, definitely.
Well, I heard you say with their families on the weekend. I'm kind of looking at, you're going to be a 7-day-a-week operation.
Definitely, yeah. We're
And
lunch and dinner.
and I'm sure that at times on the weekend, you're going to live music or whatever you do for entertainment in the place. But basically, family-friendly environment, 7 days a week.
Oh, yeah. I was saying the weekend, it was more just you see more of the families come out as groups on the weekends. But, yeah, I mean, we're filled with children quite a bit in North.
There's 11 and 8. They're going to be there all the time.
Yeah.
It's definitely a family-oriented production for sure.
And what will be the hours of operation?
We're and at least in the beginning discussions, we're going to base it off of what we do in North Kingstown. So we open at 11 a.m. For lunch, and then we try to keep the kitchen open as late as people will come within the regulations of the town. So 11 o'clock, midnight on the weekends. We do brunch on the weekends as well. And Rob and I spend a lot of time on the menu, so sometimes we change menus, sometimes not full scale changes, but we like to keep things fresh and interesting and fresh produce and what's in season. So, keeping seasonal menus and keeping people kind of excited for what's to come is a big part of what we do. And it makes it fun for us, in all honesty.
I mean, knowing this town, being a resident here and owning a home here, I don't think Coventry has kind of seen the type of cuisine that we do at Back 40. So it might be super exciting.
That would assume we have to leave Coventry to go down there, right? So, and I will give it thumbs up because I have been there. I've been there for lunch, and I appreciate the gluten-free thing.
Of course,
so.
yeah.
For us, it's very exciting, the opportunity to get into that space if it was to all work out.
I think
Great. Mr. Manager, the licenses they're requesting, Victor Lane and Live Show, is basically the same license that with their previous owner, am I correct?
Correct. Same exact.
Same exact thing.
Yep.
That's District 4. What do you like?
That is District 4.
What's the interior going to be like?
I actually, we've done, us getting into that space is kind of contingent upon everything working out here. So we've done some basic initial renderings that I brought for the town.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Now, it still says Fat Bellies on the hostess stand that in the renderings, but this is just kind of, our goal is, it's more of an aesthetic fix is the way we're looking at it, so we're keeping the general footprint and just,
So you're maintaining that bar the way it is, and
the bar's gonna have some refinished work, we're gonna add some metal aesthetic pieces to the face of it, refinish the whole top, but just to give you an idea.
so you're gonna lighten up the place.
Well, they got sunglasses on in the pictures, so I guess they're gonna be.
It looks good. I mean, the place definitely did, need a little cleaning up and a little, but looks like,
And again, those are just initial renderings. That's actually Nathaniel Green. We're trying to, Nathaniel Green's portrait along that back wall. We're trying to tie that in to the whole, the whole idea, just like being part of that, the community, really.
great. Well, if we'll open up to the public. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak in this matter? Seeing none, hearing none.
Any positive entertainment in the community is great.
Okay, thank you, John. Is there any more questions from the council? Any more concerns?
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it.
Motion to accept.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in any discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Congratulations.
Ayes have it. Welcome to town.
Thank you. Hope to see you out there.
Welcome
Okay,
to town.
great. Any idea of when things are gonna roll or when it's gonna open?
Our intention is to have our work done within 4 months.
4 months.
Hit the ground running sometime mid-spring is,
Soft opening.
oh, definitely.
Okay, good luck.
I didn't want to go there, but, I didn't want to ask for an invitation.
Yeah.
The next item on the agenda will be public comment. I just want to remind, just a second, I just want to remind everybody with public comment, the rules, is 3 minutes. I'm going to enforce the 3 minutes on everybody, so it's fair to everybody. So I ask for respect from everybody who has a public comment. All right, John, I see you raise your hand. Just give your name and address for the record, please.
John Assalone, 6 Veronica Court, Coventry. I hope this doesn't help with my 3 minutes.
Okay.
Although, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Thank you so much. Love the opening remarks.
Thank you.
These disgusting photos of Main Street. There's been over 500 comments on these places. The junk cars I even offered to remove at my expense when someone said, well, the lady's keeping them as a treasure and she can't afford them. They're just disgraceful. I have compulsive travel disorder, so I get a good chance to really get around. And Coventry's going to hell visually on Main Street, have such treasures, South Main Street, but I'm here also on non-collections of money. And I lay this at the feet of Mr. Gorham. I won't go into all the issues, but the one biggest issue, everyone's looking for money, get this money back, get that money. The old Maplewood Inn, a sanction was placed against them 2 years ago, $50 a day. It amounted to over $20,000, maybe $30,000, I'm not sure. These people went to close their business. Mr. Gorham never went after that money. And it looks like the new business, Welcome to Coventry, is going to be stuck for that money. That is absolutely, I want to be kind. It's at your feet. And I don't know who he's going to blame it on, but I'm waiting to hear. That terrible old building was $114,000 in taxes in arrear, a $50,000 sewer fee, and it sits there like a monstrosity, and the tax collector tells me we can't do anything about it. We can absolutely do something about it. Unfortunately, many people want to see it be saved. You're talking $1 million and change to save it. Have the tax sale, buy the building, forgive the taxes, get rid of the sewer fee, auction the land. That's your only hope on this. Nobody has any common sense so far, because I don't think you know about it. We had a moronic manager, let me be kind, I just think he was an idiot as far as running a town. And he did terrible things here. And the best I could get from some people, well, we're not allowed to talk to him. I mean, a lot of people knew what was going on, and this guy just stayed there. So the money can be collected on that building, or it can be destroyed. But Main Street, I ask you to please do something about it. Comments have been made because I have a project down the street. Sure I do. And thank God, and for nice people in there, it's going very well. So I want to see Main Street done. I will offer funds for people when they want to rehab their homes, low interest rate. All these things are possible. I offered this to the planner. Let's get together with the housing community and let's give these people some help and I'll fund it. That was 2 months ago. So you have treasures on South Main Street. You have treasures on Main Street. Why don't we take care of them and give it a little bit of uplifting in the community? But I would like to ask Mr. Gorham, why didn't you do anything about collecting that money, waiting until the business came in?
This is public comment. You don't have to answer. I mean, it's not public debate, but you feel free to answer if you'd like.
The excuse me, we got a judgment against the building through the municipal court, against the property, excuse me. And I think the amount outstanding at the time that the new owner bought it was $30,000. You're incorrect that the new owner paid that. The new owner bought the business.
I did not say the new owner paid
Well,
it.
you did. You said the new owner paid that. That's exactly
I think
what
it's
you
an
said.
escrow, isn't it?
No, it's not an escrow. What's happened is the people who did not maintain it, it's being withheld in escrow pending the sale, and all that money is going to go to the town. And it's not going to go to the people who owned the old Maple route up until the time of sale. It's being deducted from their proceeds at the closing. That's the normal way that it's always done. And that's how it's being done here. So the town gets the money. The new buyer, I think it's a Family Dollar, if I'm not mistaken. They're not paying. They're not paying any premium at all. Nothing.
Then
not a
I
penny.
stand corrected.
All right.
And I will correct it publicly.
They wouldn't have bought it. If we had done that, nobody would come
Well,
into
there was a
town,
great
but
debate. There was
we
a great
can't do that.
debate, if I recall, who was going to pay for it.
Excuse me?
There was on my understanding, there was a pretty good debate as who was going to go for it, whether it be the town, the new builder. There was no discussion on that
There
at
was
all.
no discussion at all.
So we get the money.
We get the money, and the new tenant, not the new tenant, the new owner didn't pay any premium at all.
No, no.
And the other thing I want to make sure I tell you is that when the new owner came into town, we made it a priority to make sure that the sale closed because we knew people would be very upset if we didn't get the deal done so that new businesses could come into town because when that's part of my job
I
to make
think that- I
sure
think that's
that
good
new
news.
businesses can come into town with a smooth transition and without impediments.
took-
I hear that all the
okay.
time when I sit up
And
here.
it took 1 year for that business to get through town, which Warwick did in one meeting.
All right, John, I think our
Can I
time's up.
ask one more question? Can the town take over property, sell it, and forgive to get money for the town?
The town can bid in at tax sale. You're absolutely right. Can
And-
do that, does it quite often. They can take the fee simple interest through the typical process in the courts. The trouble with doing that is that if the property is filled with asbestos or has other liability, it's a judgment call by the town council whether to do it. I've never been asked to do that assessment. I don't even know if I could, but I can tell you the first way to look at it from a legal standpoint is that it's a risk assessment. Why do you want to take over a building that nobody else wants to buy? If you're the town, it may be the prerogative of the town council to lead, but it's really up to them.
I think we're going to look into it because it
Yeah.
is an eyesore. There's no doubt it's an eyesore.
Yeah.
But there has been some discussion about it,
Yeah,
and
it's
we'll
worth
keep you
looking.
informed.
Myself and the finance director and the town safety officer, Mark Robitaille, went and reviewed this building the other day. We went and looked it over about 2 weeks ago. We're looking at the process. I spoke to Monique in reference to this, about the tax sale, about taking possession of this building. The problem is, just as you said, the liability factor on this building for the town to take this over in the current condition and the possibility of hazardous material, especially in the building next door in the garage, John, this thing is a minefield of cost to the town. That we would, if we took it over because of the tax sale, we're looking at a huge amount of money. Even trying to take this building down is going to be extremely
Yeah, it's
expensive,
not
as
that-
you know.
It's not that expensive to take it down. The asbestos would be a problem. To take it down is not that
It has
expensive.
to be remediated prior to. So
But
that's
you're
what
gonna
I'm
look-
saying, the
you're
cost
gonna-
of taking
You're gonna
down.
look into it.
We are looking into it. We're looking into the whole thing. We're also looking at what we can do on trying to go after the owner as well. We are looking at it. It's not something that's just sitting there. We were on this before you started posting it.
How about the junk cars in the
That
yard?
one I am going to talk to our zoning, and I will get on them about that. I'm going to pass these on to them tomorrow morning, and I'll
But
see what we can do on that.
I have offered to the town, and others will help, funding for people that cannot improve their homes, pay it when they sell the home. Anybody. It just looks better for the town. The town looks better. That's my opinion, and I'm willing to do that. Thank you.
Mr. President, if I may?
Yes.
This building happens to be in my district.
Yep.
It's on the corner of 117 and Mapledale Avenue. It was brought to my attention, so I decided to do some checking of my own. Without gaining access to the interior of the building, but making a determination on the date that the building was built and the fixtures that were attached to it when it was built, the estimate that I received to demolish the building and remediate just the building material off that site to an approved site that we'll call Rhode Island Central Landfill, is between $65,000 and $75,000. The cost of remediation for any asbestos product that is estimated to be in the building, because when we checked the building, we naturally couldn't gain access to the inside of it.
I don't think you'd want to go inside it.
And the asbestos remediation also includes what people are calling a garage. At one time was a machine shop next door. You're looking at between $250,000 and $275,000, because anything with contaminated asbestos on it, there is not an approved disposal site in the state of Rhode Island. The closest approved disposal site for asbestos-related construction material is in Meriden, Ohio, and would either have to be put on a rail car or sealed 18-wheel containers to be hauled out there. That's the closest site. The market value on that piece of property after everything is done, with the parking that's available on that piece of property, is probably less than what it would cost the town to tear it down and remediate the asbestos material that's inside it. With that being said, as the representative for District 4, I can tell you that this is unacceptable. It's a fire hazard waiting to happen, and it's probably going to be some poor homeless person who's staying in there and lighting a fire to try to stay warm, and is probably going to end up dying in this fire trap, or one of our firefighters is going to end up dying trying to protect a piece of property that should be burnt to the ground. So we need to address this, and we need to address this soon. We're in the cold weather now. It's going to continue to get worse. It's certainly not going to get any better. But I just wanted to let Mr. Asselone know that since it was talked about publicly, and you're right, well over 500 hits on Facebook just about this piece of property alone. I decided to do some checking on my own as the district representative, and those are the figures that I came up with. So thank you for the
Thank you,
time.
Mr. Cody. Is there any possible grants or anything to involve a possibility of looking?
I've spoken to Caroline, Mrs. Wells, about this. She'd love to be able to, reclaim this building and bring it back. There's nothing out there that she's aware, because of how the condition is just beyond anything. That's why I said we wouldn't even attempt to enter into it because it just, I was afraid that we were going through the floors in there. So it's just a bad building. And like I said, the understanding, Gary, that building next door, the garage, yeah. I don't,
It's got a concrete slab floor in it that's collapsing.
yes,
A
yes.
concrete slab floor, that's collapsing. That's how bad that is.
How, did you get into that one?
It's coming in through the ceiling.
Did you get into that one? No, you didn't get into that one, right?
No.
No.
All right, well,
I ain't going in either one.
I will,
all right, we definitely, we'll look into it some more.
we will look a little further. We are, the remediation, we've got a piece of property that DEM is gonna be doing, the old, mill workers house next to, a little further down. That one is being remediated by DEM. They're taking care of all of the cost on that. And we're hoping to sell that piece of property off once that's done. But yeah, we'll look and see what we can do on this. I will not let it, sit.
Okay.
I'll work on it.
All right, next, we're still public comment. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak? Yes, sir. His name and address for the record, please.
Bradford Mayor, 360 Hope Furnace Road. Good evening, council. I would just like to ask that you consider moving public comment back to the beginning of meetings for a few reasons. One, members of the public might have concerns or facts about items that are to be voted on later in the meeting. Two, it wouldn't keep members of the public here if they have any other professional or personal commitments. And three, it would help solidify the position of the council that you do care what the public thinks. Thank you and have a happy holiday.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else in the public who'd like to speak? Yes.
Nancy Sullivan, 6 White Oak Court. Tonight, I'd like to welcome the new council members and the returning council members to yet another year of working with our town, and I look forward to having you work with the citizens. One of the things that I'd like to make sure everybody knows is you have microphones. And although you think you talk really loud, by the time it gets back, there are some people who cannot hear. And when you have some little stuff going on, it's still, so please use your mics. When voting, whenever talking, please use your mics so we can hear. Okay, thanks.
Just a note on that, this council's gonna make a point of making sure that we do not talk over each other. We're gonna all talk one at a time so we can hear. So we're gonna try to put an end to that like it's been in the past. So we will try to be more, sometimes it's easy to forget to turn the microphones on.
I'll raise my hand while I'm in the back. And that
we'll make
knows you
sure.
got to talk into it so we can hear you.
We
And
want
it's really
everybody to
hard
hear us.
too when somebody's up here. If they're talking over here, they're talking to you and it's not bouncing back. So if you would remind who's ever standing here to kindly talk so we could hear the conversation they're offering up.
Okay, we'll do,
Okay?
thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, yep. Anybody, got comments from the council? Sure.
Yes, Mr. Wazika was very, Mr. Wazika. I gotta write a cheat note on here. What's on, what's off? I haven't got it right after all these years. My apologies, folks. Mr. Wazika, I was so happy to hear that you've already started to look into this building, because I go by this building 3 or 4 times a week, and I'm aghast every time I go by. It's such a bad impression for anyone. But when you say you look into it, I believe you will do that. But what I would like to see is that there be an agenda item in January that just gives us a follow-up, what's happening, a progress report. Maybe there's nothing much to report, but I would just be happy if we kept on monitoring this, okay?
I will have something on the January 10th meeting and give you an update on what we found and where we are with it.
That's great. And the other thing is, a gentleman asked about public comment, and I know that at the school committee, we did have public comment basically before almost every agenda item, or for every agenda item, and we did not wait until the end. And that helped us to get some feedback from the public. It does have to be managed by our president so that public comment for every agenda item doesn't take up the whole meeting. But I think that we can manage it so that we can get some feedback, and it will help to inform decisions. So I'd ask you to consider it and ask all members to consider it. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the public? Seeing none, Motion to adjourn.
I second the motion.
And we have a motion, and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting adjourned.